So I'm looking at another part of the article I highlighted. Imposter feelings often arise from often arise most acutely from threshold crossing, from one social class to another, one culture to another, one vocation to another. In the context of small business, I think that threshold crossing where I've triggered people is one economic class to another. When what I've observed is the fear of success is like I work with a lot of people. I started originally teaching video marketing, teaching people how to use video to promote their businesses, and this was years before the pandemic. And most often, what I saw was a fear of failure. I'm going to look like a fool on camera. I'm going to, just people are afraid to fail. And once you get them past that point, what I discovered or learned, became aware of is something much worse, which is the fear of success. That was something that I found really, it was unsettling to see people who were more comfortable in perpetual struggle than they were with the idea of no longer having to struggle. When again, when I working with somebody, put them on a program and it's working and they see it start to work, and then they just blow it up. They just derail the program altogether, and in favor of staying in a place of perpetual insecurity, choosing to just keep treading water, and sometimes not necessarily, your head bobbing below and you swallowing a few ounces of water, rather than getting into a boat. And it was to see the same thing over and over and over again was again one of the many things that made me realize this is not a coaching issue. They know what to do, and at this point, I can see what this is a refusal to do it. Why is this person refusing to do what they know is in their own best interest?
Well, so I had fear of success. I was fearful of success, right? I'm gonna be honest. Um, and so I'm gonna break it down to a little bit. We talked about Black women. I'm wondering if that mentality is like being a freed slave, or versus if somebody says, "Here's your papers," and some slaves stay on the plantation and other ones leave. Like the thought of, oh snap, there could be a different life, and that fear. And so some of that, I'm wondering if that's passed down from generation to generation, right? And kind of, it's a learned behavior. Like, as long as I'm making this amount of money, I'm good. I don't want to be greedy. And if they grew up in the church, I think that there's these mindsets, but I remember I was fearful of success. I used to write it in my journal. I used to tell people, and they're like, I don't understand that. And I'm like, well, I am, but it is a phenomenon. It is something. Right now, I'm not fearful. There's other things that I am fearful of, but I don't no longer say I'm fearful of success. But I'm just wondering if there's these certain mentalities that are getting passed down that they don't know what does success look like? It's almost like, hey, I dreamed to Z. I didn't know that there was anything past Z. And so when you give them the opportunity to say, hey, there's other letters that we don't know that you can go get, you know, um, it's it's just like, how some kids have an imaginary friend. Did you have one?
Nah, one of my cousins did though.
Okay. So it's like when the adult tells you to stop having the imaginary friend. And so then their reality, their imagination actually gets like stunted. And so there becomes this, you're telling them to imagine, and that this imagine what you're imagining can truly happen, and they're too scared because there's nobody else doing it, or the people that they see doing it they don't have contact with or they can't plug into. So like my godfather, who's my second cousin, um he was my man. He had his own telecommunications company. Like he had his own dump trucking business. He laid like the foundation for the buildings in Crystal City. But it wasn't until he was like late 70s, early 80s, he died maybe 3 years ago, that I knew he like was a millionaire. Like, I didn't know that. I didn't, like, you know, and so when I told him I was starting my business, he would like support me, like, hey, you know, Marsha, do what you need to do. But I think if I would have known that he was that, because he didn't, he would help people and all that stuff. But if I would have known that, I think I would have, the fear of success wouldn't have been so scary, because like, I knew the things that he had done, but I just, but I also saw how lonely he was. But he was like my best friend. I would go over to him, over his house, and we play I Declare War. It was just something. But I think that parents can like put a thumb on, you can't have that. You can't imagine that. You know, I think society, it cuts you off. And I know, I, and speaking from my own experience, I know my fear of success. I no longer say that. And you've helped me with that. Like me asking for help, I now see myself going to the places that I want to go. And sometimes I struggle, but I no longer use that verbiage.
One of the things that you said that I heard was, I don't want to be greedy. That, and I've heard variations of that. What I've heard is, I don't want to make too much money. When in the context of me working with a woman business owner, it's always, men never say I don't want to make too much money. Never. It's always women. And I've heard I don't want to make too much money more times than I. It's just weird. And I always ask, okay, well, do you feel like you have enough money now, or you're on pace to have enough money to retire one day, and when you want to retire and live the life that you want? No. Well, what is the concept? How are you worried about having too much money when you don't have enough? Like, you can we get to not from not having enough money to having enough money, and then maybe worry about too much money, but you're worried about having a surplus when right now you're at a significant deficit for what you're going to need. Most
Right.
people are just treading water when it comes to their income. They
Right.
cannot handle a significant incident, a significant incident that has a significant cost. They're just not able to absorb that. So anyone who is in that position, you really have no business worrying about making too much money. You need to stack up a nice healthy cushion. And I think that's going back to emphasizing one of the points you made about not knowing your uncle was a millionaire, and not having a real understanding of what, or a healthy relationship with money, because this level of comfort with making just enough money to sustain your livelihood, that's not real security. And to be comfortable, to develop a mindset where you're comfortable and secure in that place, and don't want to go to a place where you have an abundant surplus in case something happens, or even if it doesn't, so that you can just live a better life. That's something that I believe, a combination of business coaching and therapy, mindset work, um,
Yeah.
is necessary. I've just met too many women who have money blocks. They just,
Right.
the idea of making plenty of money, getting paid a healthy amount for the services they provide, and not having to work like a dog to do it, is a concept that they vigorously reject, which sounds weird, but I see it all the time. They would rather work extremely hard for not quite enough money. And I'm not talking about corporate environments. I'm talking about, again, the small business world,
Right.
where you set your prices. You get paid whatever you tell them they have to pay you. And
Right.
if you're not charging enough, you're not being oppressed. You're doing that to yourself.
Depending on your relationship with money, money is based on your relationship with your mother. And if women have constantly had that mindset around, I don't want a surplus, then us as women actually need to work on that and bring our mothers more into our hearts, but understand, money revolves around our relationships with our moms and a relationship with ourselves.